4-year-old lost in the Siberian wilderness gets a miracle from an unlikely hero. Siberia is not for the unprepared. If the animals don't get you, the mucky bogs and wetlands might be what do you in. And while navigating that terrain, you have to look out for wintry temperatures of like -70 degrees Fahrenheit. And did we mention there aren't a lot of people around to help you when you're in trouble? In other words, it's the last place a 4-year-old and her dog would want to make their playground. But that didn't stop little Karina Chikatova and her pooch from following her dad into the dangerous wilds anyway, where she faced every challenge the rugged terrain had to offer. 4-year-old Karina Chikatova lived in a remote Siberian village in the Far East region called the Sakha Republic. There she shared a small home with her father, mother, grandmother, and her dog, Nida. Like most kids her age, Karina was energized by a youthful curiosity, that urge to explore and know and understand, which was why in July of 2014 she followed her father, Rodion, on an expedition into a part of the Siberian wilderness also known as the taiga. Now, this decision was problematic for a few different reasons. The first reason being that the taiga is very much an animal kingdom, dominated by bears, tigers, and wolves with really sharp teeth and an appetite for people. The second problem with Karina's decision was that she'd not told her grandmother, the person charged with watching her at the time, that she would be following her dad into the bear-infested wilderness. In fact, she hadn't even told her dad that she'd be following him. So literally no one on the planet knew that this 4-year-old girl was diving headstrong into the most dangerous territory on the planet. No person, at least. Karina did have a companion at her side, Nida, the family dog. That evidently was all the comfort the little girl needed. But it was little comfort to her mother, Talina, when she realized her little girl and the dog were both missing. At first, Talina figured her youngster and the dog followed Rodion to his native village. But Siberia wasn't exactly flooded with quality LTE, so she couldn't pull out a cell phone and check. Instead, she waited to hear from her husband. In the meantime, Karina followed her father until she somehow managed to lose his trail. Her dad disappeared from view, leaving her very much stranded in Siberia with Nida, and the bears, and the wolves. It took 4 days of waiting for Mother Talina to learn that, no, her daughter was not with her husband in his home village. No stranger to Siberia, she understood this to be a very bad thing, so she alerted authorities. They deployed a 100-person rescue team to head out into the Siberian wilds to find her. The team carried rifles to fend off bears. Yeah, there were that many bears in the woods. Helicopters sliced the sky and rescue workers on foot combed through the trees and tall grass. But their search proved fruitless. Karina was nowhere to be seen. But then 9 days after she went missing, authorities found a clue. More specifically, a clue walked right up to the authorities and introduced herself. Nida returned home, but Karina was not with her. What should have been a hopeful moment only seemed to confirm Talina's worst thoughts. If she was to hug her puppy, Talina said, we thought this would have given her a chance to survive. So when her dog came back, we thought, that's it. Even if she was alive, and chances were slim, now she would have definitely lost all hope. But Nida hadn't just wandered absent-mindedly home. She seemed eager to show the desperate family and the rescue crew something important. The dog headed the group of rescuers and led them into the wilderness. The dog led authorities to a spot in the wilderness, but none of them saw Karina there. Nida, it seemed, couldn't find the exact area where she'd left the little girl. Authorities wondered if they were anywhere near her at all. But 3 days later, 12 days after Karina first went missing, rescue workers spotted a child-sized footprint on a riverbed beside a dog's print. The footprint revealed Karina was barefoot, a crucial detail for investigators. This told rescue workers that Karina was likely not in the woods. Too many sharp sticks there would have been a nightmare on her feet. This narrowed their search down considerably, and the following morning they executed the new search plan. And sure enough, just 20 meters from where they started searching, one rescue worker noticed a peculiar lump tucked away in a patch of tall grass. The whole crew rushed over. They found her nestled in the grass. She was starving, thirsty, exhausted, and covered in mosquito bites, but nevertheless alive. They brought her tea before carrying her to a car and whisking her away to a nearby hospital. The child spent some time in the hospital, but physicians determined there wouldn't be any lasting damage. A psychologist examined her mental state and found, shockingly, her mind was in a good place. Talk about mental fortitude. So how did a 4-year-old survive in the Siberian wilderness? The little girl told reporters and her family that she survived off wild berries and river water. Then, of course, there was Nida, the lovable canine that gave her warmth at night and companionship in the daytime. The two reunited for the first time back at home when the hospital released Karina. The meeting did not go as expected. When Karina first saw her dog, she looked her in the eyes and chided, "Why did you leave me?" Those 3 days of solitude must have really affected the little girl. But eventually she came to understand what her dog did for her. "It was Nida who rescued me," Karina said sometime later. "I was really scared. But when we were going to sleep, I hugged her and together we were warm." Karina's story gripped everyone watching, and locals even erected a statue of the girl and her pooch to celebrate their strength and will to survive. Not bad for a 4-year-old girl and her dog, huh? In the end, Karina made a full recovery, and by 2018 attended a ballet boarding school 350 miles away from the village she'd wandered away from all those years ago. Her teachers believed she had the talent to compete in Russia's competitive ballet scene. When she just started her classes, Karina was very reserved, a boarding school leader said. "She's changed so much and became a lot more open, sociable, friendly, and independent. She made many friends who love her lots." But even as she danced like an expert and earned friends with her exuberant personality, she would never forget the friend that made it all possible, Nida, the loyal canine. Thanks to an abundance of technologies and other people, we can easily pinpoint our exact locations. In this day and age, it's hard to get truly lost, though some places, like rural Siberia, are not so Wi-Fi rich. 15-year-old Svetlana Avai lived her entire life in the Gaidan Peninsula, a frigid place in northern Siberia. Svetlana dreamed of a life outside of the continuous routine with her family. Like many others, she and her family herded reindeer to make a living. Though not the most exciting profession, shepherding instilled Svetlana with deep confidence when it came to navigating Siberia's tough terrain. While she was stuck at home, Svetlana wished she were with her brother. He spent the summer at a different camp some distance away, presumably living it up and having all the fun Svetlana wasn't allowed to have. But of course, he wasn't that far away, just 4 miles. Svetlana figured she could make that journey in no time at all, and that whatever her brother was up to had to be more exciting than sitting around with her family and some reindeer. So Svetlana set off to visit her brother. She was traveling alone and without any kind of navigation aids, but she wasn't worried. She knew the terrain like the back of her hand, so surely going a bit further wouldn't pose a problem. Several hours passed and Svetlana started to panic. She should have made it to her brother by now, and yet she stood in the middle of the wilderness with no people or buildings in sight. She began to feel dizzy. Meanwhile, her family back home grew concerned. Svetlana had never gone out alone for such a long time. Her uncle Ivan, knowing that time was precious, organized a search party of family members and neighbors. They had to find her. But Ivan understood the vast scope of the Siberian region. They could surmise the rough direction in which Svetlana had headed, but that knowledge only went so far. She could have gotten lost and switched to any other heading. And that was precisely what happened. After a rough night out on the tundra, Svetlana couldn't make heads or tails of where she was. Before she could head back home, however, another issue pressed on her mind: survival. Svetlana felt certain help was on the way, but realized it could be a while until anyone arrived. With a bit of luck, she located some cloudberries. They were half frozen and unripe, but they were food. As more time passed, Svetlana kept moving. She continuously looked over her shoulder, for she knew dangerous beasts lived out in the tundra. Arctic wolves would usually go after stray reindeer, but they would gladly accept a lost girl as their meal. Night fell again and again. Although daytime temperatures could sometimes reach 80 degrees Fahrenheit, the night air dropped far below freezing. Svetlana shivered herself to sleep as she fought to stay alive. Svetlana grew so weak that she could no longer walk. Nevertheless, the will to survive kept her going. Praying that some help would arrive soon, she began to crawl on her hands and knees. She didn't have much time left. Her uncle Ivan continued the search, but there wasn't any trace of Svetlana, who went missing over 2 weeks before. He had spotted some brown bears, though. Could a bear have hunted her down and dragged her off to its den? Dismayed, Ivan walked around an area just 7 miles from their home. Then, without warning, he spotted a figure on the horizon. It ambled toward him. Without thinking, he ran towards the shape and hoped for a miracle. It was Svetlana. Though her body was battered and bruised and she was emotionally spent, somehow she stayed alive. Ivan resisted the urge to scold her for acting so foolishly and arranged for a physician to examine his niece. Living in such a remote part of the Gaiden Peninsula, Svetlana did not have access to a full medical staff in the immediate vicinity of her home. A helicopter arrived to carry her to a hospital. Once aboard, she shared her incredible story. Nobody could quite believe how Svetlana scraped together the bare essentials out of the wilderness. Though still just a girl, she managed to evade the tundra's many hazards while knowing how to take advantage of its biggest asset, plenty of fresh water. Amazingly, Svetlana seemed pretty healthy. Though she had no shelter and barely any food over the course of 2 weeks, her vitals were pretty steady. Doctors found no sign that her life was in danger. But just as a precaution, Svetlana's family kept her in the hospital in Tizovsky to fully recuperate. They gave thanks that she survived such an ordeal and hoped that after her harrowing adventure, Svetlana wouldn't mind spending time at home again.